Good afternoon. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Ghanshyam Tiwari on today's Wednesday Wisdom panel. Mr. Ghanshyam Tiwari is the founder of Neat Prep Goodday Technologies Private Limited and also the founder of the Parliamentarians with Innovators for India COVID-19 Action Platform, PIIndia.org. He's also a national spokesperson. He's joining us today on a BW Dialogue to speak about education and all the work he has been doing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ghanshyam. How are you doing?
Thank you everyone who's watching. Thank you the VW team, and it's great to be speaking to you, Vasudha.
Yeah, it's great to have you too. I just want to start by asking you, how has the last 18 months been for you professionally and personally?
I think last 18 months at many levels have been a very testing period. At a personal level, at a professional level. At a personal level, the testing period has been there because you could see your loved ones, your friends, their loved ones getting really impacted. You could see the fear of the pandemic seep in, and you could also see the strength as well as the commitment. Yet the predicament of the frontline workers, healthcare workers who are out there making things happen, ensuring that people get vaccine, ensuring that people get the treatment. Pretty much you can see the citizen action at the move. In many places, the government action has been much slower than the citizen action. So from that perspective, it's been a testing time. On the professional front, I think the test really has been that with all the vision and knowledge one can have and commitment towards society one can have, such opportunities, such crisis is also a time where you have to put yourself to test and say that what can you do for society, what can you do in these times of crisis which happens once in a century, and allow the country or your society to move forward professionally, socially, politically. And on that front, it's been a period of testing ideas, enabling teams, building new thoughts, both which are short term and long term. Parliamentarians with Innovators, a society that not for profits, Section 8 company that has emerged in COVID times. The only platform where members of parliament from differing political parties, 10 political parties, have come together, listened to innovations, supported several innovations, and now we are building national missions under PI India, focus on public health, focus on education, focus on girl education, and everything that we can support in response to COVID, both in the near term and the long term.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you are found. Sorry, Dr. Batra has also.
Go ahead, Vasudha.
I just wanted to ask you about your Neat Prep Goodday Technologies. It seems that you guys had a very strong start, that you made a lot of revenue in your first 4 years. And you also seem to have been competing with Baiju, which we all know is a very big company, big rising company right now. Can you tell us, like, what made you want to start this?
Well, around 2015 time frame, at the time I was working with the Chief Ministers of Bihar, and my co-founders were, one of them, Jaiprakash, was working with Goldman Sachs. Kapil, who's the CEO of Neat Prep, was running the India operations of a large consulting firm. And all three of us, and Anis, fourth co-founder, all four of us have had a similar value system, looking at education as a means to transform lives. And this was around the time when we also saw images from Bihar go viral, where parents and relatives were climbing trees and buildings so that kids could cheat. We thought that this could be transformed. This was not the time when the internet highway of India was so speedy and so ubiquitous. But we still thought that knowledge had become ubiquitous in the internet age, and one can create a network of good teachers and enable a lot of children to learn from these good teachers in their local languages. My work, or Kapil's work, or Jaiprakash work, oriented us naturally towards focusing in Hindi, in other languages which people understand, rather than just English. And that became the foundation as we put together Goodday, which stands for Good Educator. Just when we were getting started, we were fortunate to get right amount of angel funding from seasoned entrepreneurs. The NEET exam was announced by the Supreme Court, and we said that maybe this is the first space that we enter. And as it happens with most startups, you enter one space, if it is large enough, you stick to it and try to establish a leadership. So So it's been 6 years trying to establish that leadership. We now on the NEET platform have students in more than 600 districts. We have students, more than 1100 students who became successful through NEET Prep at various government medical colleges. We believe that the NEET exam is due. We believe that this year we will have more than 2,000 such students who become successful. We offer student a lot of free content, a lot of low cost content in the language that they prefer, in a model that is more easy for them. It is not live learning. It is a lot is asynchronous learning alongside live lectures, continuous motivation. But eventually, what we've been able to establish is an aspirational, purely online platform for students where they know that if they're part of this platform, they have a real shot at making it to through the NEET exam. And beyond, as the social initiatives that spiral beyond this, based on my other work, we are looking at other opportunities that it creates in society. For example, there is a program that we are trying to build under PII that is called drbeti.org. I feel very committed and ambitious about this program. If you look at healthcare in India, the primary customer of healthcare system is a woman. She becomes a mother in places like UP, Bihar, where marriages happen sooner. Maybe a 20-year-old girl becomes a mother. She is the customer of healthcare system. She needs healthcare support. The infant needs healthcare support. In comparison, a 20-year-old male does not require equal support. But if you look at healthcare providers, the primary provider is still male. Maybe 80% of our doctors are male, two-thirds of our healthcare staff is male. And a lot of decision making is on the male centricity. If you look at the research, it says that women are better caregivers internationally, and India is skewed in this performance. Now, if you plug NEET program in this, if you look at the NEET exam itself, nearly 16 lakh students write the NEET exam. These are students who take biology in class 11th. And the last data that I checked, over 57% of these students are girls. So more than 9,50,000 girls are taking this exam. This is probably the most ambitious and aspirational exam taken by most number of girls in India at high school level. If we can power, barely 1 to 2% of these girls will make it to medical entrance. That's the number of seats that are available. I'm talking about government medical colleges. So 98% would not make it. If we can power programs that enable these 98% girls who have the aspiration to be a doctor or a dentist or join healthcare system, if we can enable ways, counseling, career networks, and other ways by which these girls can join healthcare, they can join alternative programs in undergraduate and thereafter get the guidance, can be connected to Women in Health Network and join the healthcare system in their town, in their village, in their state, then suddenly you will see a much more nourished and rich healthcare system in India, where each of these girls would be both an information center, healthcare support system, and in many cases a healthcare leader for their community. So anything you touch in India, if you have the mind of an entrepreneur and an aspiration to serve people, this is where what I call as public entrepreneur. Then you become a public entrepreneur. You have to look at not just the business horizons, you have to look at the horizons beyond business, that how are you changing society and how are you building a new generation that is better than the past generation.
Thank you so much, Vasudha, for setting the tone for this. Thank you, Mr. Tiwari, for joining us in a conversation on education and skilling and edutech, and of course, all the good work that you're doing in the area of enabling lives, enabling education of disadvantaged children, people who've lost their parents, helping them through their initiative. But we'll stick to Goodday, and you already told Vasudha how you started it. For our viewers and readers on bweducationworld.com and businessworld.in, let me tell you, apart from being the spokesperson for the Samajwadi Party, most of you may know, but let me reiterate that he studied at IIM Bangalore before he was in an NIT. Then he went to post his post-graduation. He went to the, he's gone to Harvard and he's studied public policy. So he's somebody who's seen the best of education. So I'm sure he realizes the value of education. That's why he set up Goodday, and that's why he's trying to make sure children have the right future. If they have the financial support, then they can go on to get education. He was born in Bihar, and his father was in the forces. And you grew up in Andhra Pradesh, if I'm not wrong, right? Again, a state where there's a huge urban and rural divide. Now, coming to Goodday, while you explain to Vasudha what is Goodday, give us the impact that Goodday is making, and what are your future plans in terms of Goodday, and what should we expect over the next 12 to 18 months?
Sure. Three quick things. First, one is with respect to the program that you alluded to, which is called Digital Bharati, which is basically a response to COVID under PII, where we have built an alliance of various edutech companies, Vedantu, Topper, Byju's, Education Initiatives, and GradeUp, and other companies, Career, iDream Career, Goodday as well, where the focus is to offer to those children who have lost a parent last year or this year, for whatever reason, offer them 3 to 5 years of education support, either through learning vouchers or device support or any other support that we can offer, alongside counseling for mental strength and mental health. So that is the overall program that we are building under Digital Bharati. So far, over 60,000 scholarships have been pledged in that program. And I think we seek to partner with states so that beneficiaries are easily identified and the opportunity is made available. Eventually, Digital Bharati aspires to be an invisible hand to every child who loses a parent in school years, even beyond the pandemic times. With respect to my own background, small factual correction. I was born in Secunderabad, in the Air Force Base.
You were born in Secunderabad, right?
Yes, and I grew up traveling across the country. I come from Bihar, so it's been. I feel that I'm extremely fortunate to have seen India in her towns and cities and my own.
And you fought an election from Karakat, right?
Yes.
Is that true?
At a very young age. So that's that. With respect to Goodday and the impact, I think eventually one of the early marketing lessons at Kellogg that I remember, where I also did my MBA, is the difference between what's a feature and a benefit. You can create an education program that has excellent features, hundreds of features that students will not use, and you can build in a lot of cost to it, or you can create a program where you know exactly the kind of benefits your students seek and you offer them. At Goodday, we set out to create a program which will be able to operate with equal benefits at 1/10 the cost of the best coaching at the time when we started. And today, I can say that we are in that range. In terms of impact, as I said, that even the best coachings that scaled before NEET Prep became a market leader in this space, they had 200 centers, 220 centers in 2-3 decades. We are able to provide NEET Prep courses to students across 600 districts. And we also saw that this opened doors for, especially for girls who could not travel to bigger cities to seek this coaching. In terms of impact, the 1,100 students that made to various top government medical colleges last year, this was a time when the pandemic had struck. The offline coachings had shut down, and there had to be somebody there who was talking to the students. So Kapil Gupta, who's the CEO and my co-founder, has been a chief motivating officer for the NEET students, whether they are a NEET prep student or not. They reach out to him, they look up to him to ensure that they have the best guidance and best motivation available in this long marathon that NEET prep is for a class 11th and 12th student. Alongside Jayaprakash, who's my other co-founder, he is from IIT Bombay and I'm Ahmedabad, and he's an absolute maverick when it comes to putting together asynchronous learning platforms at a very low cost. That what's the best way by which students have access to technology that works for them, in terms of offering them good quiz questions that are linked to various texts in the syllabus as per the syllabus, not over designing the product, ensuring that the videos work, ensuring that everything holistically works and students are able to efficiently map what they learn to where it stands in syllabus, and simple things that the student can seek guidance from. For example, some of the insights that started coming is that for many students, they believe that it is important to crack the toughest questions in any topic that is associated with the exam. But if you look at the success rate, it became clear that more than cracking the 100% of a topic, which includes the last 10%, which is extremely tough, if you crack 90% of 100% topics, then you are better off. So if you cover more ground and you cover 85 to 90% ground in each topic, then you are better off. The impact that has been truly heartwarming for us is stories that we hear when from Kashmir, from Bhuj, from parts of Northeast, from Arunachal, that students are able to use NEET Prep platform Even though the internet is not proper, we are able to enable them through pen drives and other ways. The other thing that is very heartwarming is the kind of students who are able to succeed on this platform. There's a girl who shared her testimony on the YouTube channel of NeetPrep that has around 6 lakh student subscribers. And this girl was covering herself in a wheel and was talking about how she prepared for the NEET exam for 4 years. After first 2 years, her family could not support her education, and that is where a platform like NEET Prep, which is extremely low cost, came for her help. And she used to offer tuitions, study at a BSc college, and alongside prepare for the NEET exam. So there is an India out there who absolutely believes that competing and succeeding in these exams is their passport for success, social mobility, and changing their society. And NEETPrep wants to serve these students who believe in this. NEETPrep also wants to serve the student who believe that you don't have to pay lakhs of rupees to prepare for and compete for such exams. So that has been primarily the impact of NEETPrep. We are unique in terms of where we are placed, while a lot of edtech companies who are heavily funded have opened up live lectures. We have, and that increases the cost of product, and alongside it opens the doors to chase middle class to upper middle class student. We have tried to create a product that any student at any cost level is able to afford.
Thank you, Mr. Tiwari. And you did what a lot of people do in the era you were studying. Though you've been continuously learning, whether it was doing your second MBA from the Kellogg School of Management or doing the course in public policy from Harvard. And before that, you went to NIT Surathkal. You did engineering, you did business school. Now, you also work for organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You work for McKinsey, you work for Intel, right? Now, and then you chose to be a political entrepreneur or a change maker and an edutech entrepreneur. Now, let me ask you on a philosophical level, while we know that edutech is trying to democratize education, to bridge the digital divide, but in states where there are no devices, and you know that, let's talk of Bihar, there's no excess is tough, devices are tough. And I'm talking government schools. I'm talking of schools in rural areas. I'm talking of schools in villages. How do you think Goodday can be a bridge to bring education to them? You already kind of in some peek into what you're doing, but tell us, what do you feel about edutech rather than creating a digital democratization in some way, are creating a digital divide?
I think yes, at this stage it may seem, but I can say three things from the experience of the outreach that NEETPrep has had. One is that students, at least at the class 12th level, have not found themselves limited by lack of access to device and internet, especially those students who prepare for the NEET exam. But if I just expand the horizon of EdTech, I think for the first time, I believe that there is a very real possibility that in a span of 4 or 5 years, one can enable every child in India towards good education. And when I say good education, it means education that is meaningful to their context. You can be a top biology student, score 100 out of 100, and yet not know the plants and trees and the birds that are there in your village or in your town. So that is education which is devoid of your context. It doesn't make you a good community stakeholder if you don't know what makes your community, what makes your place. So there is a possibility of having excellence, but having local contextualization, having local languages incorporated in places. Yes, one can say that governments can, for the first time, offer education at the lowest cost that even the governments would have imagined, at a high quality. But also, for the first time, education has become truly a citizen's opportunity. Those of us who are fortunate to be born in a family that educated us, to have the means to have some savings beyond our basic needs, also have a great opportunity and I think responsibility to create packets of knowledge in, I would say, video content or other digital content in their language, on things that they know for a student cohort that they can support. It could be a student cohort that you support online. It could be a cohort in your RWA. It could be any student. It could be one student. It could be 5 students. But there isn't a better and easier time to be a truly patriotic, giving citizen of India, where you can do simple things that will have long-standing impact. India today has highest number of children, highest number of school-going students, and probably will have the highest diversity of students who are pursuing different courses. What we do not have is excellence in these different disciplines, and that excellence is currently roadblocked by expensive institutions, by limited seat in government institutions, by barriers of language where this knowledge cannot transfer. These things could be breached. A lot of people sometimes feel that their retirement is retiring to farming and going to a village and doing a little bit of cultivation and having a good life. Even in that aspiration of a retired life after a fulfilled career, one can create knowledge in local language, their local content, and transmit it. If students do not have access to streaming quality internet, their families now have access to things like WhatsApp or ShareChat. One should be able to create asynchronous modes of knowledge that are delivered. I think what every social, political, business leader must tell to those of us who have the good fortune to afford it, is to be a knowledge worker for the country. And the best way, alongside what you do in your career, a way to be a knowledge worker in the country is to offer the knowledge that you acquire to the next generation, largely for free.
Ganjam, I'm asking a hypothetical question, but who knows? Dreams come true. You clearly believe in your journey. So look at this question in that context. And if you were to become the HRD Minister of India, what would you change in the education ecosystem? And let me ask this question. What is your comment on the national education policy, which in its intent and comprehensiveness is really complete, holistic, but implementation is the key. Detailing is the key. So what would you do? Because as we know, if we really educate our children well, if we skill them well, I think we can transform the country.
I think if you look at India, let's do top down, which is often a word used in consulting companies like McKinsey, right? India has easily 3.5 crore children born every year. Um, to be able to ensure that these children are immunized at the right age and have access to good health to become healthy children is a responsibility. That is where parent education is essential. Somebody in the government, between the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and the Ministry of Education, should be responsible for that parent education. That's the first start. Second is the age between 3 to 6. The National Education Policy speaks about it. There is no dearth. India is a continuous civilization for over 5,000 years. There's no dearth of inspiring folk that exists in every town and village in the country. All that has to be done. In the new education policy, they mention a term called Lok Vidya, which is incorporating local folk culture and creativity into education from grade 6 onwards. But if it is done right, grade 3 to 6, you can build self-pride among students. Um, as a citizen, as an unequal society, divided by various discriminatory aspects that are legacy, we have so many traps that steal away the self-esteem of a child, and ensuring that every child between 3 to 6 has the self-esteem through the stories that they hear, through the songs that they know, so through the poetry that they have, right, is an essential aspect. And I think there's some aspect of it that's being mentioned in new education policy, but the self-esteem is not mentioned enough. The third thing that then needs to happen is that as these children take to schools, I think there was a time when information was education. How much information one can assimilate in a 3-year program, 4-year program, 5-year program is information. Now that information is everywhere, information is like mass. So mass is not education; it's the velocity, the pace at which you can acquire information, absorb it, apply it, and then offer it to others, and then repeat the cycle. So the velocity of education has become of information is the new definition, in my opinion, of education. That education has to be contextualized. The education must tell the children of future India, that well, there are governments, but eventually the responsibility that your village, your town is a beautiful place to live because you live there, your parents live there, your relatives live there, is shared by that community, and you have to feel like a stakeholder in that community. And you feel that if you are educated enough about what is unique about that community, about its local culture, its environment, and you take ownership about that. So that is also something that has to be inculcated at an early age. The next thing that has to be inculcated that is now possible. If we believe in the velocity of education and definition, then we have to look at some things where people are falling off the cliff. If you look at the 3.5 crore children, the gross enrollment rate in India at a college level is 25%, maybe 27%, even though the colleges are not great, which means that 75% of the students, more than 2.5 crore children, are not enrolling in colleges. If one further analyzes this 2.5 crore, easily 1.6, 1.75 crore are girls. This is children born every year, right? We are doing a grave injustice, losing the opportunity where nearly 80% or 70% of the 80% of the girls in this country do not join college. That means that they are either getting married off sooner, or they don't have an equal opportunity to build their own identity. We are operating at a suboptimal capacity as a nation just because we cannot get our girls educated, and everything is laid out. As I said, that there are enough schools, there is enough content, there are enough teachers, and this should be done. Not one girl child should be left behind. Girls are the strongest link of society. We have a system that make them that have pushed them towards a weaker link. That is not the case. So I think that is something that has to be taken at an education minister level. The next thing is there is a lack of pride that is created by caste system, but I think the sense that every profession is equal has to be again cultivated. Where that's where vocational skills come. We did a study with World Bank, and interestingly, in that study, there are a couple of things that came up which are counter to how the National Skill Development Mission is being run. One is that people think that in villages you open a mobile repair center and every student is a youth whose school dropout wants to come and study mobile repair. That's not the case. The study that we did in Kalahandi, in Bihar, and in Uttar Pradesh, 3 states, 4 districts, it clearly showed that the youth, even if they are college dropout, have a clear sense of the demand of the kind of training that they need. It's not supply that you have a training available and they'll take that training. They are like the youth of upper middle class who want to exercise their choices. Second thing that we found out was that the entire skilling and job ecosystem in a rural district in India is ad hoc. The tools and technologies that exist in an urban center now don't exist right now. That is easily fixable. The third thing that we found out was that that led to a next work that we started, is that in rural districts, uh, less than 5% of girls responded to this question, that what is the kind of training or job that will get your career started, which means that forget labor force participation and its low rate.
They're not even thinking of employability.
The society has become such that the girls in rural districts don't know where to take the first step from. For a guy, it is just about picking up the phone and finding out what the salary is and what the job is. For a girl, there are a lot more questions that, are there toilets, are there other female co-workers, what's the social prestige, what are the working hours, and then somewhere down the line comes uh, what's the salary and what's the job. I think there has to be a consistent effort. That is where education links to industry, where even small enterprises, a bakery shop or a sweet shop or a restaurant, has to mark that it's a safe place for girls and women to work. It's a friendly place for girls and women to work, especially in rural districts. That any impediment that is there is removed. So that is the next thing. If our education does not lead to what has not been told to a lot of middle class parents, is that in today's India, the bridge between high quality education and a good job is broken. That is why you see that people are going out to any extreme to find any new degree that they can find, and brands are selling, but they are not converting to jobs. I think somebody has to tell that truth with data. That look, there are so many people who went to all these expensive schools, and the jobs are not forthcoming. There has to be alternate way to imagine the career of the child, alternate way to invest. We are not a country where people, the middle class money can be wasted for false pursuits just because information was not provided. So I think Another thing that the HRD minister needs to do is to ensure that the fake news around education is diminished, that the falsehood that is built, that you take this and this is a rocket ship to your career, right? If it does not exist with respect to data, then it is diminished. So these are some of the things. I think I still have a long way to go to prove myself to be more useful to people of the country. So we will see how that goes.
Thank you so much. My last question before I bring in Vasudha again for the next set of questions. Very few people who are bright professionals who get good education, who are idealistic, who have the skills, are wanting to be teachers. Less and less people want to be teachers. How do we bring the best in the society to become teachers? How do we make being a educationist, being a teacher, being an academician, the most preferred profession? Because if you look at UK, US, the two most respected professions are teachers and doctors. But in India, less and less bright people are opting for being a teacher. How do you think this can be corrected?
I think that I can say from personal experience. My mother was a teacher. She used to teach Hindi at Kendriya Vidyalaya, where I studied. I think there
Nansham,
was.
both my parents are academician. My father went to BITS Pilani, but he chose to be a professor, retired as a principal. My mother was a school principal, a school teacher, school principal. Then she became a senior person at the SCRT. So I was born to academician parents too. So, they are my role models, and that's why I'm saying this. That's why I'm asking you this question.
I think there are many things that go in. First of all, clearly there is a difference between the government teacher opportunities and private teacher opportunities. Today, if you look at the lack of jobs available out there, any government job, and especially a teacher job, is very, very lucrative. A lot of people apply. I think the idea that 16 to 35-year-old children and youth in India are engaged in writing so many exams that that are often about questions that do not relate to work that you will do and the way you can contribute to society. How is knowing that when was the third Panipat war, which year did it happen? How is that making you a better clerk or making you a better primary school teacher? So I think one is that when it comes to government school teachers, there is there are a lot of good talent that is available and that are applying. I think the opportunity in the private sector is much more market facing. That what is the fees that a school is able to charge, a college is able to charge, and what is the kind of talent that can be attracted. But if we take the national ambition to be a powerhouse of knowledge as a country, then everyone must, as I said initially, that everyone must carry an aspiration to be a part-time teacher for the country.
I was thinking it may sound like a very radical. I'm not sure it's implementable also, but like you have national service in Singapore, in the US, it should be compulsory to teach for 2 years for everyone who graduates, or at least not graduate, post-graduation. 1 year for a graduate, 2 years for a postgraduate. What about a radical idea like this?
I think compulsory again creates a baggage in some way. I think if you just enable for example, the management school you went to, or the education institution Vasudha would have gone to, right? If you just enable people to seamlessly build programs in those schools and those places, right? I think that is much more doable. Right now, there are less programs where anyone can go back to their village and teach for a week. There has to be a standardized program enabled by the government that ensures that there are no hurdles. If somebody wants to do a short-term teaching in a rural school or in a town school, right, in a predefined format, predefined subject, it should be incentivized. Often people's incentives is not going to be money. It's just the desire to give back. But that desire has to be dignified by seamless enablement of by the system for such a person. So maybe there's an opportunity to create some kind of policy, some kind of effort that people are seamlessly able to go back to their to the schools and colleges they wish to, and offer their knowledge. This cycle has not yet started, but I'm very hopeful that this cycle will start. A lot of us will go back and offer our knowledge in structured forms to institutions of knowledge in communities that we hold dear.
I was lucky enough to go to the Management Development Institute in Gurgaon. I jokingly say, but partly true, that I got in when the quality control was bad. I'm from the first batch, 94 batch of a MBA, first full-time batch of MBI. And, and my wife's from IMI in Delhi. And now I am fortunate enough to be the first PGPM alumnus to be on the board of my alma mater. I'm an AICTE nominee on the board of governors of Management Development Institute for the last 20 odd months. And about 10 years, I've been married for 21 years, but 10 years, maybe 8 years into marriage, I told my wife, I want to be MDI director. I have a huge affinity with that school at an emotional level, at a knowledge level. I love the campus. I love, but I said, are you crazy? You want to go and be the director of a business school, you want to teach. So, while she's from a business family, she's educated well. So, there is that like teaching is like it's for people who retire, or something like that at least. So that needs to change. Of course, that's not my ambition anymore. I want to contribute to my alma mater in different ways. And I don't think I'd fill the criteria of ACT to be the director. But I'm trying to tell you that that's the kind. Also, by being an advisor to many business schools and being on the board of some, I realized that the salary that directors of even top-notch business schools get is very little. So how will you attract talent? Money is an important factor. I mean, it should be for passion. You should be doing what you do. But if you have a family, you have responsibilities. I mean, I remember having a conversation with Professor Ashish Nanda, who came from Harvard Law School, and we became the director at IIM Ahmedabad. There had to be a special resolution moved to get his salary because, if he was in the US, even if he was a professor, he'd make much more money than being the director of IIM Ahmedabad, which is a huge corpus lying in its bank, right? So I think money is also important to attract, but people come to education because they're passionate about education, about teaching, about making a difference to careers of others. So you rightly said you're an optimistic person that by being part-time or in some way teaching as adjunct faculty or mentoring, mentoring is very under-leveraged in our country. We can contribute to nation building by building the careers of young people. So I'll let Vasudha take the rest of the question. Back to you, Vasudha.
Thank you, Dr. Batra, and thank you for sharing that anecdote. It's quite interesting because I come from a Bengali family, and in our family, it's more like you keep studying and you teach before you join business. Like business is the absolute last option. And it's quite interesting how these stereotypes like exist, or these thinking kind of exists across India. How every culture kind of sees different parts as being more important or less important. And of course, teachers are always caught in the middle because you can't do anything without teachers. And I also want thank you for clearing up the name of your Goodday Technologies, because I assumed the ed took for education, and you said it was for educators. Can you tell me why it was important for you to distinguish that?
I think right from the very beginning, we said that we want to build, and that aspiration remains. We want to build a network of good educators, teachers across the country who can use platforms eventually to teach students who they feel an emotional connect with. I think teaching or many professions which are very noble, you cannot just be a professional teacher. I think there has to be an emotional stake that each teacher puts into the lives and minds of the students that they are teaching. And that is why so many very, very successful people go back to their alma mater, donate, and do say that one thing or two things that a teacher said to them that changed their lives. So I think uh, there needs to be more platforms that celebrate good educators in the country, and educators of all kind. When you start a new venture, you are very ambitious. At a PowerPoint stage, everything looks like a thing that you can conquer. But then once you enter, and depending on the pace of the capital that you are able to raise and the team that you build, typically your vision becomes more focused towards one thing that you are doing. But you always carry that ambition that if that one thing works out properly, you'll be able to further replicate that in more avenues. I think there is tremendous scope in India to be able to build networks of good teachers, especially in local languages, that know the cohort of students that they want to serve, the community of students that they want to serve, and serve for a long time. The idea that a complete rock star remote teacher will sway a million students is exciting, but I think that will not democratize education. The idea that there are very, very good teachers in every town and every panchayat of India who will use edutech to acquire information and then use their emotional commitment um, and conviction for their community to teach the next generation of children of that community. I think that is very exciting, and that is more scalable for a country like India. uh, we are a country that likes to express, and we are a country that likes to keep building its social mind. I think edutech eventually will meet up that point where it is not just uh, video on riding on great technology. It will be something that is very contextualized, which is where the heart also meets, and the teachers know the students they are teaching and know the change that they are building in that community through better information and knowledge transfer.
So yeah, one thing I really like about the delivery that you're giving is that you seem to have a lot of knowledge about exactly what's going on in the education sector, what's happening in India, and you come in with all these statistics at the tip of your tongue. And I wanted to ask you, because you did mention that you collaborated for research. How do you approach these researches? Like, is this something that you do through Goodday Technologies, or does this happen through your public service? And since when have you been doing this? Like, what made you want to, get into research and finding all these statistics of exactly what the like that environment is like in India and education?
I think part of it is my work in politics. You are arguing on a public platform, telling people what is good for the society and what is not, putting your neck out there. So you need to have a conviction of why you think in a certain way. I've been trained to look at data and use that, and the life experience as a further trainer on why that data points in a certain direction and why that conclusion is important. So part of it is that. The second is the other social initiatives that I take up. For example, PI India, the Dr. Beti mission. I think research is important if you, again, as I said, that you can be an entrepreneur where your focus is business, or you could be a public entrepreneur where your focus is to be that entrepreneur who solves for society and looks at problems that no one else is solving. But if those problems are resolved, then society will collectively get to the next stage. And there are enough problems out there in India. For example, of these 6 lakh villages in the country, how many villages, even though they are fertile agricultural lands, how many villages have a good public park? Why should they not have a good public park? Right? It's a problem that some public entrepreneur will pick up, even at the village level or at a bigger scale, and solve it. So I think the use of data becomes more interesting when you are ready to look at data beyond the horizon of your business interest, and then see that how is that data going to help you change society.
Yes, and it's interesting that you also mentioned the parks because, like you said, education is not just about teaching and students and their engagement. It involves parents, it involves your environment, it involves your physical environment, the infrastructures. Having parks, yes, absolutely. Like a good campus for universities even can absolutely change the way we learn in that place. But how do we make sure that all this kind of synchronizes together? Like, because it seems like the more you look at it, it becomes a much bigger and much more complex process to sort of like make all these things work together.
Well, I think
Yes, please, you will sound like you're saying something.
Sorry to interrupt. I think it need not be synchronized. I think where India can compete with rest of the world is that the view that several founding fathers of India had, that while we are one country with one kind of ethos, in this one country there are um, hundreds of thousands of small habitations that have existed by themselves with free expression. And I think if different people again, choose their own communities that they are serving, and incrementally make those communities better. We will be a beautiful country where a lot of diversity will exist in how one community is succeeding to give a better quality of life through a different way, and compared to another community that is also giving a better quality of life through a different way. So I think I don't expect a government to decide and say that let's have public park everywhere. I do expect that someday the panchayats, the people in that village will decide that let's have a good public park here, and they will look up all the information that is available to how to form a good public park, use mutual voluntary support available, and create that. I think that is when the society will be towards an automatic machine that keeps improving itself. Similarly, with respect to knowledge creation, and similarly with respect to another every other thing. So I don't think that one needs to synchronize and think at the top level that this is exactly what should happen and then let's make it happen. I think that's the wrong way in a diverse country like India. What needs to do is one needs to find ways by which one good thing in one community induces another good thing in another community, and that induction happens at a fast pace.
I think that's a really good way, a very good perspective to take on things and a good approach to it. I also want to change taxes a little bit here because I did read about this incident where you were apparently really influenced by a picture that went viral in 2015 of mass copying going on during a CBSE board exam in Bihar. Could you tell me about how this experience affected you, and why was this photo? I mean, it was a very shocking photo because obviously people don't do this because I mean it comes out of desperation, right?
I think that to those who were not seeing what was already happening, it was shocking. For a lot of others, they knew it, but still, sometimes you know something and then you see it in news everywhere, and suddenly your sensitivity about that changes. Um, Really, it shouldn't happen. Thing is that we should not be a fail culture where from class one onwards students are taking tests and you say that you failed here, you failed there, right? Rather than looking at the past culture where you're looking at you excelled in this, you excelled in this, you excelled in this, right? And I think it is this whole idea of creating one ticket exam, which is a passport for everything, that creates desperate times, because then everything is building up to that one ticket exam. Eventually, where the new education policy has an opportunity to succeed and change the course for the country is that we have to look at education as various micro electives that students at a higher secondary level are taking. And if you have enough credits across diverse micro electives, you should get your class 10th. Why should I be denied my class 10th matriculation if I'm not good at mathematics, but I'm excellent at Hindi and excellent at social science? My matriculation should just say excellent at social science and Hindi rather than saying failed in mathematics. But we have created a system that is unnecessarily objective. It doesn't help the student. Um, and if we were to measure our system by the self-esteem that the student who's just is about to become an adult after passing, who's passing class 10th or class 12th, where does his self-esteem lie? Maybe there are 5% of students whose self-esteem is perfect, but there is a large 95% of students whose self-esteem has been impacted by how the education system treated them, how the society
I think
around
you're being
them.
generous with that 5% of people who have good
I think
self-esteem.
I think yeah, maybe I'm generous, but I think that it's important that, and I just say this from personal experience. The one thing about being in Air Force is that you travel a lot as a kid. So you go from one school to another, and every time you go to a new state, new city, new school, you see a new culture, right? Even though these are all Kendriya Vidyalayas, right? So my school in Chennai, in Tamtam, in that school there was a competition almost every 10 days or every 3 weeks, and as a result, every classmate that I had, when they graduated from the school, they had a ton of certificate about where they excelled at something or another. The other schools, when my father was transferred to UP, the other Kendriya Vidyalayas, they had one competition in an entire year or two competition in an entire year. So which means that school lost so many opportunities to instill self-esteem among the student. Eventually, self-esteem is not how a stranger treats you. Self-esteem is built around how people around you treat you. right? How the elders in a village will treat you, how your family members treat you, how your friends treat you, and how your teachers treat you. If you've been treated well in your school years, there's very little chance that you will feel unequal or feel inferior from within, right? And that is something that has to be inculcated in the education system. So I think again, um, this is an aspect that has to be brought together into the education system um, for it to perform better.
No, absolutely agreed. I mean, I also traveled a lot. My father was in IFS, so I went from Indian schools to foreign schools to public foreign schools, depending if it was English school. And the one thing that was always, luckily for me, was that the teachers were always absolutely excellent. They always gave, in my first experience, I got a lot of attention from my teachers because they were always, well, they were stressed out because they were like, how do we make this one person catch up in class? So even in India, I got that attention from teachers, and I know my classmates who did not get that attention. And the experience we both have from school is absolutely, heads and tails of what we learned, what we came out of it. So no, that makes a big difference, and also class size, it makes a big difference. But at the same time, these aren't always situations that we can tackle easily, right? Because you want to keep costs down, and at the same time, make sure that it's accessible to everyone. So like how, and then, like Dr. Butler mentioned, the salary of some professors of directors is so less, but it's like if you increase the director's salary, then all other costs will also go up. And then that can also trickle down to students and their ability to afford education. What is a way we can kind of work around this? How do we tackle this?
I think if we imagine a system where low cost of education and high or market-facing salary of teachers are put on the same place, then it is not going to be a workable system. I think what is more likely is that low cost of education is anyway going to going to work out. What is also more likely is that the teachers' salaries um, have to be looked at in terms of the electives that they teach, and depending on the electives that they teach and the audience they have, there could be a teacher who's specializing in 10 electives, and as a result is able to command a good price because now you can do online courses, on-campus teaching, tuitions, and many other things. So I think one aspect of acquiring education is that you have the monkey on your back. You have the onus to invent, create what is a more workable solution. The students cannot create a low cost affordable system. So for the government, the singular focus should be a high quality education system that is available at low cost to every student. It's like clean drinking water in your tap every day,
Yeah.
right? No amount of low cost mineral water can be a solution. Eventually, that has to happen in public education. As far as teaching is concerned, I think eventually teachers in India will span the entire spectrum. There are some teachers who will make a lot of good money teaching in India, outside India, through online, and creating IP products, creating a brand for themselves. And there will be a lot of teachers who will be able to make enough money to run a middle class lifestyle. Um, I think that problem should best be left to the future generation of teachers who are taking this as a career. Uh, in the middle are citizens who are simultaneously knowledge seekers and knowledge workers. I think it's very important that every professional out there looks at oneself as a knowledge worker, not just in terms of what they deliver to the company, but also the knowledge that they deliver to the society, especially the part of society that needs that knowledge for upliftment of life.
Right. No, that's really well put, and thank you so much for joining us today. And in the interest of time, I would just like to ask you one final question, and I'm going to go back all the way to the beginning where we were talking about Goodday technologies. I just want to ask you, how do you see this growing? Like, what is the plan to grow on this edtech?
I think there are two dimensions where there's a good opportunity to grow. One is that the NEET prep itself, one can create similar content in Tamil English, Telugu English, and various other languages, and further expand to ensure that every child who wants to take the NEET exam has access to good quality content at a very, very low cost. So that dimension, these are still very early days, and I think that space is going to expand. NEET prep is roughly $2 million annual revenues. There are more than 70,000 students who are enrolled in various programs that can easily scale up many times. The other dimension is the medical education dimension in India. There is great opportunity to look at, as the Indian government has set up the next exam for every MBBS student. It's an opportunity where India can come to the same place where global medical and healthcare education is. And if we are on the same pace in terms of what is to be taught, what is to be tested, then India will soon be producing more content in this space. Globally, the medical education is a $130 billion market, growing at around 9 to 10% annual run rate, and 90% of this education happens in classrooms. So there's an opportunity for the country to be a powerhouse in medical education. That journey also starts from NEET prep. So for us as a company, these two dimensions that we are looking to expand on. But this is as much at the pace of capital that becomes available as it is at the pace of the management bandwidth. But I think these are two very good spaces to scale rapidly.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today. And for everyone watching, thank you for watching us. If you want to go back and rewatch this entire interaction, then you can do that on our YouTube page, our LinkedIn, our Facebook, and also BW Education. This is world.in or bweducation.com. Thank you so much, Ghanshyam, for joining us today and speaking so frankly about all this and sharing so much information with us. It was quite insightful and very eye-opening. And I feel like I've learned so much. And it's also always great to have people who are public entrepreneurs, like you said. And it's almost like a little, like when you're always hearing bad news during the pandemic, having conversation like this can really be re-energizing almost, and like rebuilds your faith in humanity and makes you also want to participate and contribute. Like you said, one small act can kind of like have this ripple effect to society. And I think that this conversation has definitely been that for me. And I hope it has been for our audience members too. We have this Wednesday Wisdom every week. Next week, we're going to have it again at 4:30, and we will have IBM Manoj Balachandran, head of CSR activities, along with Dr. Biswajit Saha, director of CDSC, talk to us about a collaboration that they did together to introduce AI and employability skills with students. So please join us again next week. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who's listening. I don't have all the answers, but I have tried to be very frank about what I think is a good way forward. And eventually, I hope that some of this enriches your own experiences and gives you a direction that is valuable. Thank you, everyone.